Introduction to the GMAT. About the GMAT. Well over 6,500 graduate management programs awarding MBA, PhD, or MA degrees incorporate the GMAT, the Graduate Management Admission Test, as one of the most important factors for admission to their programs. The GMAT comprises of 4 sections, which include Analytical Writing of Assessment, AWA, Integrated Reasoning, IR, Quantitative Math, and Verbal. The exam tests students' higher-order reasoning skills, such as complex judgment, critical thinking, analyzing, and problem-solving skills. In my opinion, the GMAT is the most difficult logical exam that requires both English proficiency and mathematical skills. History of the GMAT. The GMAT, Graduate Management Admission Council, writes and publishes the GMAT exam. The GMAT was first established in 1953 by the world's leading business schools. In earlier times, the GMAT instructed students on successful business skills in the classroom. Later, it was revised for students to establish necessary skills for their MBA, graduate level management degree, or specialized program. Later, developments created an exam, testing students on high-level reasoning skills. Currently adopted by more than 6,500 graduate management programs, the GMAT is a key factor in gaining admission to these programs. Sections of the GMAT. The GMAT is composed of 4 sections: Analytical Writing, Assessment, Integrated Reasoning, Quantitative, Math, and Verbal. In this table, you can refer to the number of questions and the given time for each section. Sections of the GMAT. Analytical Writing Assessment, number of questions, 1. Time, 30 minutes. Integrated Reasoning, number of questions is 12. Time, 30 minutes. Optional break, time up to 8 minutes. Quantitative, Math, number of questions, 31. Time, 62 minutes. Optional break, up to 8 minutes. Verbal, number of questions, 36. Time, 65 minutes. Total time is 187 minutes. Students may choose in which order they prefer to write the sections of the exam. It can be math, then verbal, then AWA and IR, verbal, then math, then AWA and IR, AWA and IR, then math, then verbal, or any order of students choosing. Students must write the AWA and IR sections together, but can write the math and verbal sections separately. 1. AWA, 30 minutes. AWA is composed of one essay-type argument question. Students need to type their responses directly on the computer. 6 is the perfect score. 2. IR, 30 minutes. IR is composed of 12 different format logic-based questions. A calculator is allowed. 8 is the perfect score. 3. Quantitative, 62 minutes. Quant, math, is composed of 31 questions. These questions include 2 different categories: PS questions and DS questions. These question types appear randomly throughout the exam. A calculator is not allowed. The exam location provides students with pencils and blank sheets of paper. 400 is the perfect score. 4. Verbal, 65 minutes. Verbal is composed of 36 questions. The 4 categories of questions are reading comprehension, sentence correction, and critical reasoning. These questions appear randomly. Pencils and blank sheets of paper are provided. 400 is the perfect score. Note, there is an 8-minute break during the exam. Be sure not to exceed this given time. If you are late, the length of time you have to complete the exam is decreased. What the GMAT math covers. 1. The GMAT covers up to 11th grade high school level math, including geometry, algebra, and statistics. 2. Trigonometry, logarithm, and calculus are not within the boundaries of the GMAT. Therefore, sine, cosine, and tangent do not appear on the exam. 3. The matrix is not within the boundary of the GMAT. However, there can be questions dealing with the concept of a matrix. 4. Imaginary numbers and complex numbers, such as square root of -1 equals I, do not appear on the GMAT. 5. The complicated limits are not within the boundary of the GMAT. 6. Differentiation, integral calculus, vector functions do not appear on the GMAT. The topics covered are limited. However, the GMAT is difficult because it involves logic. How to register for the GMAT. 1. Go to www.mba.com and search for available time and location. You can register through this site. 2. You can download a free application for 2 sets of sample tests from this site. It is a very good idea to work on these tests right before the exam. 3. You can also purchase 4 more sets of tests from this site. All these tests are CAT, Computerized Adaptive Test based. 4. I recommend that students take the exam after spending at least 2 months preparing. If you score above 30 on verbal, you can register for another exam within a month. If you score below 25, wait at least 2 months before signing up for another exam. 5. The difficulty level of the sample prep tests is about the same as or more difficult than the actual GMAT exams. 6. If you score around 45 on the math and around 35 on the verbal doing the prep, you could achieve a score above 700 on the actual exam. If you already scored 45 or above on the math during the prep, after studying my variable approach and Ivy approach, you could score above 49. Please keep in mind that you need to be able to score 45 or above on the math during the prep. 7. There are no penalties for taking the exam several times. During the admission process, many MBA, MA, and PhD programs only look at the most recent 3 exams and choose the best score. Some schools might claim that taking the exam several times is disadvantageous to students. 8. Internationally, all GMAT problems are CAT-based and originated from the same test bank, regardless of where you take your exam. 9. Students with different nationalities may not be allowed to take the exam in certain regions or countries. Consequently, your score might not be validated if you take the exam in certain regions. Be sure to check where you are allowed to take the exam before registration. Characteristics of the GMAT. 1. The GMAT is a computerized exam. The GMAT does not test students on business knowledge, English vocabulary, or computer skills. It tests students on reasoning skills. 2. The perfect score for the GMAT is 800. However, in practice, if you score above 750, this translates into a 99 percentile, which is a perfect score for the GMAT. Scores of 760 to 800 are all translated into a 99th percentile. That is a perfect score. 3. There are dummy questions on the GMAT. About 6 to 10 dummy questions appear on the GMAT. Students cannot distinguish dummy questions from ordinary questions. 4. The GMAT is a CAT Computerized Adaptive Test-based exam. Accordingly, you get a medium-level difficulty question as your first question. If you get questions correct, you get progressively more difficult questions. And if you get questions incorrect, you get progressively easier questions. The first question is a medium-level difficulty question, which is a late 30-level question or an early 40-level question. How to calculate scores of the GMAT, verbal, and math. The score range of each section, verbal or math, is from 0 to 60. Any scores below 6 or above 51 are almost impossible to receive. The general score range of the GMAT is from 200 to 800. Scores increase by increments of 10. Determining scores depends on the number of answered questions, the number of correct and incorrect answers, the difficulty level of each question, and the undisclosed statistical distribution of each question. Undisclosed complex mathematical calculations based on the difficulty levels and how a student answers each question determines the section scores, verbal and math, and the total score. The computer starts calculating scores either after students finish the exam or time expires. How to calculate scores of the GMAT, AWA, IR. Two independent reviewers evaluate the essays in the Analytical Writing Assessment, AWA. These reviewers were typically experts or faculty members of universities or colleges who have a background in critical thinking and writing. Scores on the AWA range from 0 to 6 in increments of decimal 5. Scores on the Integrated Reasoning, IR, range from 1 to 8 in increments of 1. The total GMAT score out of 800 does not include the AWA or IR, which are reported separately. Students are allowed to cancel their exam after receiving their total score. Score percentiles are determined based on the 3 years' worth of student data possessed by the GMAT. Integrated Reasoning Section. Based on quantitative, verbal, or a combination of both, students must analyze given data and solve complex problems in the IR section. IR is composed of 4 parts, as listed below, with 12 questions. Multi-source reasoning, table analysis, graphics interpretation, 2-part analysis. A calculator is allowed. To properly analyze graphs and deduce the results, students need table sorting skills. The IR section does not have a decisive impact on the MBA program admission. Quantitative Math section. The math questions appearing in the quantitative section are quite difficult because they are logic-based. The exam tests students on their data analysis and logical skills. The quantitative section is composed of 2 parts with 31 questions. Problem solving, data sufficiency. A calculator is not allowed. Students need a full grasp of the fundamentals of arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and word problems. Knowing some physics concepts helps because speed and work rate questions also appear on the exam. You can get a great score easily if you learn the variable approach and the IV approach treated in our video lessons and practice questions. Verbal section. The verbal section tests students on their reading comprehension and logical skills. Students also need to understand the structure of argument. The subject matter of the reading comprehension passages includes business, history, social studies, and science. No outside information is required to solve any verbal questions. Students should focus only on the information included in the passages and questions. The verbal section is composed of 3 parts below with 36 questions. Reading comprehension, RC, critical reasoning, CR, sentence correction, SC. All 3 verbal parts require logical and advanced English skills, but they don't test students on vocabulary. Although students don't require any outside knowledge, it's my experience that students usually understand science passages faster when they have some foreknowledge regarding science. The verbal part is difficult. You need enough time to study. Analytical Writing Assessment, AWA. The AWA gives 1 topic for analysis of an argument to write an essay about within 30 minutes. Students must directly type their essays into the computer. The AWA tests students on their critical, analytical, and deductive skills. Scores depend on how well students write and express their arguments and the quality of the examples used to support their arguments. The AWA section does not have a decisive impact on MBA admission. But you need a good score if you are aiming for a top-tier MBA program.